Welcome back to the show. I have to say, looking at the stack of research we have on the table today, I actually did a double take.
Oh, I don't blame you.
Yeah, I checked the file names to make sure we hadn't mixed up our folders or something.
It is definitely not what you would expect when you see the name Brian Tracy at the top of the pile.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, we know Brian Tracy. The world knows Brian Tracy. He is he's the titan of productivity.
Right.
He's the guy who tells you to eat that frog. He's the guy you listen to when you want to double your sales figures or manage your time down to the minute.
Or structure a corporate takeover. He is Mr. Efficiency. He's the blueprint for high-performance business logic. If you want to optimize a workflow, he's absolutely your guy.
Exactly. But today,
Mm-hmm.
we aren't looking at a seminar on quarterly projections or leadership strategies. We're looking at a transcript from a roundtable discussion at Yetter and Cat Studio. And the topic isn't business.
No, it's not.
It's love. It's relationships. It's the messy, emotional, totally illogical world of romance.
Which is a fascinating pivot. But what really grabbed me as I was going through this material is that even though the topic has changed, the methodology really hasn't.
That is the wild part. He hasn't suddenly become this soft, poetic romantic. He's seemingly taken the exact same ruthless analytical tools he uses to save failing companies, and he's applying them to saving marriages.
Which on the surface sounds like a terrible idea. I mean, systematizing love sounds cold. It sounds like you're trying to put a spreadsheet over a heartbeat.
I admit that was my very first reaction. I thought, great, we're going to KPI our affection now. But the more I read through this discussion, which, by the way, features his daughter, Dr. Christina Tracy Stein, his son David, and his daughter Catherine, the more I realize that maybe we have been doing it wrong this whole time.
Right.
Maybe the reason so many relationships fail is that we treat them purely as these mystical, emotional events that we just have no control over.
And the Tracy argument is that while the feeling is magical, the mechanics of a relationship are actually structural.
Structural.
Think about it. If you entered a business partnership with no contract, no exit strategy, no clear roles, and no way to resolve conflict, you would go bankrupt in 6 months.
And yet, that is exactly how most of us enter relationships. We just sort of vibe and hope for the best.
And then we wonder why we end up emotionally bankrupt.
Yeah.
So our mission for today's session is to see if we can extract a Tracy method for the heart. We are going to look at how to audit a relationship like a business deal.
Which sounds intense.
It is.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about zero-based thinking, which is a terrifyingly effective tool. And we're going to look at something they call the zero criticism policy.
Which I am just going to flag right now, something I'm highly skeptical about. No criticism in a real marriage. It just sounds impossible.
It sounds completely delusional, honestly. But when you unpack the logic, it becomes really hard to argue with.
Well, let's get into that logic.
Yeah.
Because if we are going to run our love lives like a high-performance organization, we need some ground rules.
Yeah.
And the first rule they discuss is this zero criticism concept.
Right. And to set the stage for this, Brian invokes Dale Carnegie, the classic How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Which is basically the Bible of soft skills.
It is.
Yeah.
And the core principle he pulls out is this. The deepest craving of human nature is the desire to be important, to be valued.
Okay.
So the first job in any relationship, whether you are a CEO talking to a janitor or a husband talking to a wife, is to make the other person feel important, or at the very least do absolute nothing to diminish their sense of value.
So do no harm.
Basically, yes. But Brian isn't just pulling this out of a textbook. He shares a story about his own childhood that explains exactly why he is so militant about this. And it's a pretty heavy story. He talks about his mother.
The bulldog story. I have to say, the way he describes this really stuck with me. It wasn't just, oh, my mom was strict. It was something else entirely.
It was visceral. He says his mother had a memory like an elephant for mistakes. If he did something wrong when he was 10 years old, maybe he broke a vase or forgot a chore, she wouldn't just scold him then and let it go. She would bring it up again when he was 12. And again when he was 15.
He used the phrase, she got her teeth into it like a bulldog.
And she wouldn't let go. Imagine growing up in that environment. You are trying to figure out who you are, but you're constantly being dragged back to your absolute worst moments. You are defined by your errors.
It creates this permanent record.
Yeah.
You can never really start fresh because the archivist is always right there to remind you of your failures.
Exactly. And Brian analyzed that experience and came to a very firm conclusion. Criticism is poison.
He doesn't pull his punches there.
No, he doesn't use soft language at all. He calls it poison. He says it causes pain that can last a lifetime. It destroys self-esteem. It makes people defensive and resentful.
So because of that trauma, and I think we can comfortably call it trauma, he swung the pendulum to the absolute opposite extreme. He and his wife, Barbara, decided that in their family, and even in their company, there would be zero criticism.
None whatsoever.
Okay, play the skeptic with me here for a second, because I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, that is really nice, Brian, but I live in the real world.
Right.
If my employee loses $1 million account because they were careless, or if my partner forgets to pick up the kids from school, silence feels like negligence. You have to correct people, don't you? You can't just smile and say, you are valid.
That is the million-dollar question, and this is where the nuance is really critical. Brian isn't saying you ignore the mistake.
Okay.
He isn't saying you pretend everything is fine when the house is literally burning down. He distinguishes between criticism and constructive feedback based on the direction of time.
The direction of time, what does that mean?
Criticism is inherently past-focused. It looks in the rearview mirror. It says, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. You always do this.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
It focuses on the event that is already over and cannot be changed. And usually, it attacks the person's character in the process. You are lazy, or you are careless.
Which immediately triggers the defense mechanism.
Right. As soon as I feel attacked, my brain just shuts down. I'm not listening to learn anymore. I'm listening to defend myself. I'm actively preparing my counter-argument while you're still talking.
So what is the alternative then? The car is dented. The money is lost.
Yeah.
How do you address it without looking in the rearview mirror?
You pivot instantly to the future. Brian's method is to ask 3 things. What happened? What did you learn? And what will you do differently next time?
What will you do differently next time?
It shifts the energy completely. Instead of being a judge sentencing a criminal, you become a coach analyzing the game tape.
I like that.
You're saying, okay, the car is dented. That is a fact. We cannot undent it with yelling. So looking forward, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again?
It turns it into a logic puzzle rather than a character assassination.
Exactly. And think about the immense trust that builds. If I know that I can come to you and say, hey, I really messed up, and you aren't going to scream at me, but instead you're going to help me figure out a system to prevent it from repeating, I'm going to be honest with you.
That is a massive point. Fear breeds secrecy. If I'm afraid of the bulldog, I'm going to hide the evidence. I'm going to lie.
In a marriage or a business, hidden mistakes are the ones that actually kill you. You need the data. You need to know what is broken. And the only way to get that transparency is to remove the fear of criticism.
So the rule isn't don't correct. The rule is don't shame.
Correct. Treat the relationship like a laboratory. We are looking for data, not guilt.
Okay, I can buy that. It takes a lot of self-discipline, though. When you are angry, you really want to be the bulldog.
Oh, it is incredibly hard. It goes completely against our reactive nature. But that is exactly why it is a discipline and not just a mood.
All right, let's move from the day-to-day management of the relationship to the big picture audit. Because this next concept is probably the most corporate tool in the box. And applying it to romance feels, well, it feels ruthless.
Zero-based thinking.
It sounds like a budget strategy.
It is a budget strategy. In the corporate world, zero-based thinking is used to fight the sunk cost fallacy. You know, when companies keep pouring money into a failing project just because they have already spent 5 years and $10 million on it, they say, well, we can't stop now. We've invested too much.
A classic throwing good money after bad scenario.
Exactly. Zero-based thinking forces you to stop and ask a specific question. If we hadn't already started this project, knowing what we know now, would we start it today? And if the answer is no, you kill it immediately.
Okay, so Brian takes this cold-blooded axe and brings it right into the living room. How does that actually translate?
He asks you to look at your partner, look at your relationship, and ask yourself the core question. Knowing what I know now, knowing their habits, knowing how they argue, knowing their relationship with money, knowing their relationship with their mother, if I were not currently in this relationship, would I start it again today?
Oof. That is a heavy question. If you are listening to this right now, just let that sink in for a second.
It's terrifying because it strips away all the history. It doesn't matter that you have been together for 3 years. It doesn't matter that you share a dog or a lease. It asks you to evaluate the deal as it stands right now, today.
But how do you really know if the answer is no? Because our brains are very, very good at rationalizing. We say, well, sure, he has a temper, but he's under a lot of stress at work. Or she's not really affectionate, but that's just how she was raised. We make excuses.
Brian is very specific about this. He says, ignore the head. Listen to the gut.
The stomach knows.
The stomach always knows.
Yeah.
He says the diagnostic symptoms of a no answer are purely physical. Stress, anxiety. Are you being kept awake at night? Do you feel a literal knot in your stomach when you hear their car pull into the driveway?
That is a visceral test.
And here is the big one he mentions. Do you find yourself complaining about this person to others?
The coffee shop test.
Yes. If you meet your friend for coffee and the first 20 minutes is just you venting about your partner, that is your subconscious screaming no. That is your body rejecting the situation while your brain desperately tries to patch it up.
So let's play out the nightmare scenario. A listener is driving to work right now. They ask the question, knowing what I know now, would I get into this relationship again? And the answer in their gut is a resounding no.
Then comes the get out clause.
Which is?
In business, if a division fails the zero-based test, you shut it down. Brian applies that exact same logic. He says if the answer is no, the only remaining question is, how do I get out and how fast?
How do I get out and how fast? That sounds so cold. It sounds like you're abandoning a sinking ship.
It can definitely sound that way. But the expert view here, and I think Brian's view as well, is that it is actually the most compassionate thing you can do.
Compassionate. Breaking up with someone fast is compassionate.
Think about the alternative. The alternative is staying in a relationship that you have already internally rejected. You are wasting your own time, and you are wasting their time. You are keeping them trapped in a situation where they are not truly wanted.
That's true. It's a form of deception to stay. You're pretending to be in while you're mentally checking out.
Exactly. You are robbing both of you of the chance to go out and find a yes. By ripping off the Band-Aid, you are setting both people free.
But here is the major problem, and the younger generation in the family, David and Christina, really bring this up in the discussion. Let's say you do it. You rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
You leave the no relationship. You are single. You heal up a bit. And then you go out and find a new partner who is exactly the same version of the person you just left.
The same play, different cast syndrome.
Yes. Why do we do that? Why are we seemingly wired to repeat the disaster?
This is where we really have to move from business logic over to psychology. David and Christina point out that if you are the common denominator in a series of failed relationships, you can't just keep blaming bad luck or crazy exes. You have to perform a self-audit.
And this brings us to attachment theory. Catherine Tracy breaks this down in the discussion, and I think we need to spend some real time here.
Yeah.
Because this is the software that is running in the background of our brains.
Absolutely. If you don't understand your attachment style, you are essentially flying blind. Catherine outlines the main categories for us.
Let's start with the one we all want to be, the gold standard, secure attachment.
Right. Secure attachment is basically confidence. It's the core belief that I am okay and you are okay. If you have a secure style, you don't view your partner's independence as a threat to your existence.
So if my partner goes out with friends and doesn't text me for 4 hours, I'm not spiraling.
No, not at all. You assume they're having fun. You assume they will come home. You trust the bond. You don't need constant real-time monitoring to know that you are loved.
Must be nice.
It is the goal. But then we have the style that creates probably the most chaos in dating anxious attachment.
This is the one that feels like a raw nerve all the time.
It really is. The anxious style is rooted in a deep, often subconscious fear of abandonment. The baseline belief is, I am not okay, and you are probably going to leave me. So they need constant data to prove the bond is still there.
This is the person who texts, are you mad at me? Why are you being so quiet? Do you still like me?
Yes, and if you don't answer that text in 5 minutes, their physiological system goes into a literal panic mode. They aren't trying to be annoying, they are trying to soothe the nervous system that feels like it's on fire.
But the real tragedy here, as Catherine points out, is that this behavior creates a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. If I am constantly gripping you, suffocating you, asking you to validate me over and over, eventually, you're going to want to get away from me. I push you away with the very behavior I'm using to try and keep you close.
It is a completely tragic loop. Then, on the other side of the spectrum, we have avoidant attachment.
The lone wolf. For the avoidant person, intimacy equals a loss of freedom. They want connection deep down, but as soon as it gets too real or too close, they feel suffocated. They feel engulfed by the other person.
So when things are actually going well, they pull the chute.
They deactivate. They might start a fight over absolutely nothing just to get some space. They might ghost you for a few days. They prioritize their independence above all else.
And then David adds a fourth type into the mix, which I think is the most confusing for people to deal with. the anxious avoidant.
Sometimes this is called fearful avoidant in the literature, and this is the hardest one to navigate. It is a chaotic oscillation between the two extremes. One day, they are pulling you in, saying, I need you, please don't leave me. And the very next day, they are ice cold and pushing you away.
It's like pressing the gas pedal and the brake at the exact same time.
It is. And it usually comes from severe trauma in childhood, where the primary caregiver was both a source of comfort and a source of fear. So wiring in the brain gets completely crossed. Love feels dangerous, but isolation feels dangerous too.
So if you're listening to this and you're realizing, oh no, I'm anxious or I'm definitely avoidant, what do you do? Is the Tracy method just to stop it?
If only it were that easy. No, the solution they propose is tracking your feelings. You have to become an active observer of your own reactions. You have to catch yourself in the act.
So before I hit send on that 5th text message in a row,
You stop. You physically put the phone down. And you say, okay, I am feeling incredibly anxious right now. Is this because my partner is actually doing something wrong? Or is this my old software running an outdated script?
you have to interrupt the pattern.
And David makes a really strong point here. He suggests that sometimes the answer isn't to try and fix the relationship you're in. The answer is to take a break from relationships entirely and build a relationship with yourself.
Healing.
Yes, you have to fill your own tank. If you are anxious, you are trying to use your partner as a battery charger for your own self-esteem. That never works long term. You have to learn how to charge your own battery.
That is a powerful takeaway. You have to be a whole person before you can be a healthy half of a couple.
Precisely.
Okay, let's assume we have done the work. We've audited our attachment style. We've taken time to heal. Now we are ready to get back out there. But we want to be smarter this time. We want to screen the candidates better.
We need an interview process.
Which brings us to segment 4, the red flag interview question. The family discusses a very specific question to ask early on, maybe date 1 or date 2, that acts as a litmus test.
It is a classic job interview question, totally repurposed for romance. The question is, what are your weaknesses? Or where do you feel you need to improve?
Imagine asking that on a first date. You're having appetizers, the conversation is flowing, and then bam, what are your weaknesses?
It definitely catches people off guard, and that is entirely the point. You aren't listening for the content of the answer as much as the nature of the answer.
What are we actually looking for?
We are looking for self-awareness.
And what is the red flag response?
The red flag is evasion. If they say, well, I don't really have any, or if they give one of those fake corporate answers like, I just care too much, or I work too hard.
Right, the humble brag.
Or even worse, if they get defensive and flip it back on you. Why are you asking me that?
Why is that specifically a deal breaker?
Because if someone cannot articulate a single genuine flaw or area for growth, it means they aren't looking at themselves, they have no internal mirror, and if they can't see their own flaws, guess whose fault every single argument is going to be?
Mine.
Yours. Forever. You will always be the problem because they are perfect. It is the bulldog dynamic we talked about earlier, just in reverse.
Now, Brian shares a really funny counterexample here. He says he was once asked his best quality on a date.
This is peak Brian Tracy, by the way.
It really is. What did he say?
He looked her dead in the eye and said, I am unstoppable. I never give up.
I am unstoppable. I mean, if anyone else said that, I would just roll my eyes. But with him, you kind of believe it.
And he meant it. But the lesson he draws from that isn't be arrogant. It's that you want a partner who knows exactly who they are. You want someone who knows their strengths, like being tenacious, but who can also clearly admit their weaknesses. It is all about balance. If you are unstoppable, but you can never admit when you're wrong, you aren't a partner. You're just a steamroller.
Christina brings up a really important modern nuance here, though. She talks about the Tinder effect, or swiping culture.
This is a crucial point. She argues that we have actually become too good at spotting red flags. We have weaponized the entire concept.
We treat people like disposable products on Amazon. Yeah, you choose a little loudly. 1 star, return to sender. She has a weird laugh. Swipe left.
Exactly. Christina argues that there is a massive difference between a dangerous lack of self-awareness, which is a true red flag, and normal human imperfection, which is just being a person.
So we need to distinguish between red flags and what?
Big flags. Maybe beige flags, things that are slightly annoying but not destructive. We are looking for a human partner, not a custom-built robot. If you reject everyone who isn't utterly perfect, you are going to be single forever.
So the true goal is to find someone who is imperfect but accountable.
Yes. Someone who can say, yeah, I tend to get really grumpy when I'm stressed out, and I am actively working on not taking that out on the people around me. That is a massive green flag. That's a hire.
Okay, so we're interviewing candidates, but how do we find them in the first place? This brings us to segment 5, the perfect person factory.
This is pure Brian Tracy law of attraction material right here.
It sounds a little mystical for a hardcore business guy, but he really swears by it.
He does. He suggests an exercise where you sit down and write a physical letter to the perfect person factory. You literally treat it like a purchase order.
Dear factory, I would like one partner, please. Specifications as follows.
Essentially, yes. You list every single quality you want. Integrity, humor, ambition, kindness, height, love of travel. Whatever matters to you, you make it crystal clear on the page.
And the theory is that once you write this down, you set up a force field.
Well, let's ground it in neuroscience so it sounds a little less like magic. What you're actually doing is priming your reticular activating system, the RAS.
The RAS. Break that down for us.
It's the filter in your brain that decides what incoming information to let in and what to ignore. When you clearly define what you want, you are telling your RAS, this is important data. Suddenly, you start noticing people who fit that description because you have explicitly defined the target.
It's like when you decide you want to buy a red Tesla, and suddenly you see red Teslas on every single street. They were always there, but now you're tuned into the frequency.
Exactly. If you don't know what you want, you will accept almost anything. If you have a clear written list, you filter out the noise. You stop wasting time on the fixer-uppers because they simply don't match the purchase order.
But there's one thing you can't put on the list.
Yeah.
Or rather, you can put it on the list, but you can't just manufacture it out of thin air. Chemistry.
The spark. They reference Khalil Gibran's book, The Prophet, here.
And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart.
It's beautiful, but David gets very, very practical about this. He argues that friendship is not enough.
This is a controversial point for a lot of people.
It is. A lot of people say marry your best friend. But David says you can be best friends, you can be great life partners, you can run a highly efficient household together. But for a romantic bond to survive, you need sexual chemistry.
The zap.
The zap. And he argues that you cannot talk yourself into it. You can't say, oh, he's so nice and reliable and he checks all the boxes on my factory list, so I should be attracted to him. It's either there or it isn't.
And trying to force it usually leads to deep resentment down the road. You end up feeling trapped in what is essentially a platonic marriage.
So you need the list, the values, the character traits, but you also need the spark. You fundamentally need both.
So where do we find these people? Because if we are listening to the Tracys, we certainly are finding them on our phones, which leads to the great debate in segment 6, online dating versus real life.
The consensus in the Tracy family is pretty clear on this one. They hate the apps.
You really do. David calls it out specifically. He talks about the queue mentality.
It's the paradox of choice. When you have 5 other matches waiting in your inbox, you are never fully committed to the conversation you are having right now. You always have one foot out the door.
It's FOMO weaponized. Why should I settle for this perfectly nice person when the next swipe might be a supermodel brain surgeon?
Exactly. It breeds impulsivity and deep anxiety. It treats human beings like a restaurant menu. And David points out that online profiles are just marketing documents. They are the curated highlight reel. You don't see the negativity, the bad habits, or the red flags until you have already invested weeks of chatting.
So what is the alternative? Because people always say, well, I work from home, I don't like going to bars, how am I supposed to meet anyone naturally?
Their advice is refreshingly analog. Stop swiping and join a club.
But not just any club.
No, an activity-based club. Running, cycling, hiking, book clubs, something where you are doing something.
Why does the activity matter so much? Why is that better than, say, going to a singles mixer?
Because when you are at a singles mixer, you are performing, you are actively interviewing, it's awkward and high pressure. But when you are in a running club, you are just running.
You are doing something you already love.
David calls it vibing. You are in your element. You are happy. You are releasing endorphins. You are vibrating at a higher frequency.
So is everyone else there.
Exactly. You are surrounded by people who already share a core interest with you. The force field is already active because the environment itself filters the people for you. If you love books and you meet someone at a book club, you already have a massive foundational block in place.
And they mention divine timing in this section too. The idea that the right person will show up when you aren't actively looking.
Which is a lovely thought, but as we discussed, there is a major caveat. Divine timing cannot find you if you never leave your house.
Right. God can't send you a partner if you never unlock your front door. The delivery driver is probably not your soulmate. You have to actively put yourself in the path of luck.
You have to create the physical opportunity for serendipity to happen.
Okay, so let's say the stars finally align. You joined the running club, you found the person with the spark, you checked your list, you hired them. Now, how do you keep the business running smoothly? We are moving to segment 7, love languages.
This is based on Gary Chapman's famous work, but the Tracys have some really interesting original takes on it, particularly regarding gender and early childhood development.
Yeah, let's talk about the physical touch discussion, because this felt very real and honestly a bit heartbreaking.
David argues that physical touch is the default language for all human babies. Skin-to-skin contact is literally survival. If you don't hold a baby, it fails to thrive.
But as we grow, that changes drastically.
Christina notes that men disproportionately favor physical touch as their primary love language in adulthood, and she has a psychological theory on why that is.
What's the theory?
She suggests that as boys hit puberty, parents and society in general stop touching them. We stop cuddling teenage boys, we stop holding their hands, we pull away to let them toughen up and be men.
So they go from a touch-rich environment as children to an absolute touch desert as teenagers.
Exactly. And so, for many men, sex becomes the only socially acceptable form of physical touch and intimacy they are allowed to receive. It becomes the only time they are truly held.
That entirely reframes the whole men only want one thing stereotype. It's not just a biological drive for sex. It's a deep starvation for connection.
Correct. It's a fundamental craving for human intimacy that has been funneled into a single narrow channel because all the other channels were closed off by society.
That is profound. Now, what about Brian himself? What's his love language?
Brian is all about words of affirmation, which makes perfect sense for a professional speaker and author.
He calls it pouring syrup over people.
He believes in generous, lavish praise. He starts his seminars by looking at the audience and telling them they are the elite top 10%. He tells his kids they are the absolute best. He believes that building people up with words is the ultimate gift you can give.
It ties right back to that Dale Carnegie rule. Make people feel important. If you pour syrup on people, they tend to be a lot sweeter to you in return.
It works, but the most profound point in this entire segment is about children. Brian references a book called How to Really Love Your Child by Ross Campbell, and he drops a line that I think every single parent needs to hear.
Children spell love T-I-M-E.
Time. Not toys, not expensive vacations, not video games. Time.
And not just being in the same room while you're scrolling on your phone and they are watching an iPad.
No. They talk about the Tracy family tradition, dinner together every night, no television, head-to-head, knee-to-knee conversation.
That is deeply intimate.
It is. Brian cites a Harvard study claiming that a child's character is largely formed right there at the dinner table. That daily exchange of ideas, the active listening, the eye contact, that is where they learn who they are and that their voice actually matters.
It's the scarcest resource we have. If you give someone your time, you're giving them a literal chunk of your life that you can never get back. That is the ultimate currency.
Absolutely. If you want to invest in a relationship, you don't invest money, you invest time.
Which brings us to our final segment today, the absolute root of it all. You can have the business strategies, the interview questions, the no criticism rules. But if you don't have this one thing, none of it works. Segment 8, the self-concept.
This is the core of Brian Tracy's entire philosophy on life, not just love. The law of correspondence.
Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world.
Meaning you simply cannot have a relationship better than the one you have with yourself. If you secretly loathe yourself, you will attract people who confirm that negative belief. You will tolerate mistreatment because it perfectly matches your own internal data.
I accept the love I think I deserve.
Exactly. So how do we fix the inner world? How do we change that data? Brian gives us a prescription, a very specific drill.
The mirror exercise.
It is deceptively simple, but incredibly difficult for a lot of people to actually do.
Walk us through it. If a listener wants to try this tonight, what do they do?
You stand in front of a mirror, you look directly into your own eyes, deeply, and you say, out loud, with conviction, I love myself.
I can feel listeners cringing right now just hearing that. It feels arrogant or cheesy or just weird.
Brian completely acknowledges that. He talks about doing it with his kids. He says they look bashful, they giggle, they immediately look away. It is incredibly uncomfortable to confront yourself with unconditional love.
But what happens if you push through the cringe and keep doing it?
Brian says you cannot say it while looking in your own eyes without eventually smiling. It forces a physiological shift. It literally reprograms the self-concept over time.
It's like an affirmation override for your brain's negative software.
It is, and the logic is airtight. You have to fill your own tank. If you are running on empty, constantly looking for a partner to fill you up, you become an emotional vampire. You become that anxious attachment style we talked about earlier.
You become a burden to the other person.
But if you stand in front of that mirror and you genuinely love the person looking back at you, you enter a relationship to share your happiness, not to get happiness.
And that is the fundamental difference between a transaction and a true partnership.
Perfectly put.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We have gone from the no criticism contract and avoiding the bulldog mentality to the zero-based exit strategy. We have audited our attachment styles, written purchase orders to the perfect person factory, and learned to spell love, T-I-M-E.
It is a remarkably comprehensive system. It takes the mystery out of romance, but it doesn't take the heart out of it.
No, I think it protects the heart. It puts a solid fence around the garden so the flowers can actually have a chance to grow.
I really like that analogy.
Before we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought from the source material, something to carry with you. Brian mentions that ambition is the critical quality for the top 20% of successful people in business. The bottom 80%, he says, seek security.
It is a very stark contrast. Ambition versus security.
So my question to you, listening right now, is this. How did this apply to your love life? Are you seeking a secure relationship, one that is safe, predictable, and maybe a little stagnant? Or are you seeking an ambitious relationship, one that is growth-oriented, challenging, and dynamic?
That is a powerful question to ask yourself. Security is comfortable, but growth is where the life really is.
Something to mull over. And hey, tonight when you are brushing your teeth, try the mirror exercise. Look yourself in the eye. Say, I love myself. See what happens.
It might just change your entire life.
Thanks for joining us on this journey today. We will see you next time.